Hi, everyone. I'm Troy, and this is the Worst of Fibre podcast. Hi, everyone. It's been a while since you've seen me. My last video was supposed to go up last week, but I decided to take a break for a little while and not really do anything after work for the last few weeks, and it's been really helpful for my mental health, my motivation, all of these things. So I wanted to start today's episode by basically giving you a channel update of what's going to happen here with the channel. So in relation to like my lack of motivation that I've been finding I've been having more and more often, it wasn't really until my roommate and close friend Jessie told me that after she watched the last video that probably the reason why I have no motivation or had no motivation is that because I'm just burnt out at this point. Like working at Belfast Mini Mills and everything just kind of being a kind of a grind at this point because I'm trying to make product for the store so that way we can have enough product for the summer, despite the fact that I'm running with a like a smaller crew than what we had in previous years before COVID, while expecting it to be a summer similar to what it was like before COVID. And also trying to build up enough product to not only basically survive the summer, but have enough product to be able to make for the Fibre Festival that's going to be happening in October of this year here in Prince Edward Island, as well as hopefully having enough product on top of that to go to the spinner retreat that's going to be happening in, I want to say Cape Breton this year, a few weeks later after that, which Belfast Mini Mills has been like a major player in the spinning retreat here in the Maritimes for a number of years. So trying to get all of that ready to go while training new staff, while getting some renovations done to both the mill and the store. The renovations that had started a couple of years ago are being finished up now, where I'm going to have more space in the mill. But of course, while the renovations are going on, I can't do quite as much in the mill, which is adding some stress. So all of those things. And that added with all of the all of the social things that I felt that I needed to do to be able to keep up with like my friends and like my personal relationships, those started to stack up more on top, more and more as time went on, that I realized there a couple weeks ago that every night, every week, I had something to do. So, Sundays was for a while the day that I edited and recorded a podcast. So that was my entire day shot. And then I also had to use Sunday to do all of my errands that could happen on Sunday. The remainder would be happening on Monday, which was my other day off of the week. And Monday, we started having a little craft night with me and a couple of my other crafty music friends there on Monday night. We've been doing that. And I mean, it's chill, but like that takes up some of my free time. With it, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I really do enjoy it. But like my Monday nights are also taken up. Tuesday night, up until more recently, I was doing having a D&D session with a group of my friends, and now I'm doing a knit night every 2 weeks, which I have cut out the D&D session, so now I have every second Tuesday off, but I was doing something every Tuesday night. Symphony was every Wednesday night. Luminos was every Thursday night. Friday night was the only night that I had off, and then Saturday I was working all day, and then I had D&D again Saturday night. So I've dropped a number of things. I'm no longer going to be going back to WiP Symphony full time. I've dropped out of one of the D&D groups, and I am approaching my Monday nights and my Saturday nights now that I don't have to prepare for Saturday nights as more of a social outing where I can just do whatever I want to do. It's really calmed down some of the stress. So I've decided that because what had been happening now that I've made those decisions about a month and a half ago now, that the next major stressor that was on my life outside of work was doing the podcast. Which don't get me wrong, I love doing the podcast. I'm going to continue doing something of a podcast, but the consistent grind of what I thought I was going to be able to be capable of there in December and January, doing, a main podcast video on the first and second week, doing a tutorial on the third and fourth week, and doing a project-based class on any fifth week. That meant that I was taking up my entire Sunday every week doing things for the podcast, while trying to focus on doing projects throughout the week, so that way I had something to talk about on the podcast. And it led to a lot of guilt, honestly, where the nights where I really needed to just sit and relax and reflect and do all these things and rest, I was just riddled with guilt because I felt like I wasn't being productive. But the problem with rest is that while it is productive, if you are guilt-ridden and anxious during that whole resting process, you're not resting. You're just causing yourself stress. You're just being anxious and feeling guilty about not being productive. And I would get into these cycles where I would sit on the couch, paralyzed in decision paralysis of what project should I work on. I don't want to work on the Raga sweater. I don't want to work on the Sylphide jacket. I don't want to work on the Lacewings. I don't want to work on socks. I just want to sit and crochet, or I just want to sit and play video games, but I wouldn't allow myself to do those things because I had created a pressure for myself. It's entirely of my own creation, of making sure that or trying my best to have something to talk about, have something to show for the work that I've been doing throughout the week. So what I've decided is that instead of doing a podcast per se, I'm still going to call it a podcast, but instead of doing a week-to-week through line sort of thing, I have found that when I sat down and did the video taking and the planning out of project-based videos, which I've only done one, and I'm currently working on another for the Lacewings. I'm really enjoying that process. So I'm going to continue doing that. And I'm going to try to culminate the rest of my research into a long form video for the Shetland lace, which is something that I was planning to do anyway, and just bring all the clips back together. But I feel like it would be better served for Dr. Rosalind Chapman's research, as well as the other readings that I've been doing. I think it would be better served for that, and to do it better justice if I, spent the time that is needed to make the video good than to just pump out something. So last week when I was getting ready to sit down and do a video to show off what I had done, I didn't feel prepared to talk about anything about Shetland lace history. I had a project to show, but it just, I did not have the drive. I did not have the energy. I didn't have the motivation still to do a video. And I didn't want that less positive. I'm not going to say that I was necessarily negative about it, but less positive energy going into the video. So I feel a lot better this week because I have been forcing myself to rest. I've been forcing myself to, not be guilty about me taking the rest that I need. And I've been allowing myself to start new projects if that is what I really needed to do. I've only started one. I'm not even sure if I'm going to continue with it. It was just one of those, I need to start something, get my mind off of the other things that I've been working on, because I feel like I've been focusing on them a little bit too much. So I'm just trying to alleviate my burnout, basically. So the other videos that I will still be doing videos on what projects I'm working on, those sort of things. I'm still going to be working on my Maker's Dozen and the epic Joanne's WiP Smackdown that Joanne and I have been doing. I still will be doing updates on that, but it's not going to be a every 2 week sort of dealie. It's perhaps going to be monthly, if if so, just when I feel the desire and when I feel that I can deliver a good video and something that is high energy, something that is entertaining to watch, something that's educational, instead of it. Well, I feel like these last few episodes, like if you know me as a person in real life, that like the joy that I try to bring to everything that I do just wasn't in those videos. It very much felt like I was doing it because I felt I had to. And I want I want to do better than that. I want to do something that I want to do and not just because I have to do it, or doing things that I feel like I have to do. So there's that. And then the other thing that I really want to work on is, instead of having so much structure in my videos, make it more long form, more conversational. I felt like the last few videos, while it made it easier for me to come up with content and have like a framework, it kind of felt a little bit more sanitized. And I don't know if I like that. I'm not going to say that I'm going to throw the structure completely out the window because there is a time and place for structure, but I feel like I'm going to be using it more of a like going to go with the outlines as opposed to the scripts, and only stick to a script when I'm actually trying to do something like truly educational. So like that. And I also just kind of want to focus on more of my pattern design. I've been really neglecting that lately. Like I got out of the habit of, well, with the subscription box at Belfast Mini Mills, I got out of the habit of like pumping out a pattern every week. Granted, the patterns that I was pumping out, the quality of the writing and proofreading, all that wasn't up to snuff. So I'm going to be reviewing that. But I just want to have this as an outlet to create, instead of it being like a corporate entity that it was starting to feel like, at least from my end, of this is work that I need to do, but I'm not being really paid to do it. Yes, there are ads on the videos, but like this time of year, video AdSense apparently isn't very high. Since monetizing the channel, they're back in the end of November. The channel has made $40. So, I mean, that's not nothing, but it's the amount of hours that I've put into it. If I'm going to be putting this many hours into something that feels like a job, it should be able to pay a wage. And instead of approaching it that way, so that way this feels like a job, I don't want it to feel like a job. I want this to feel fun. I want this to be an outlet for creativity, and to try to extend the joy that I have in handicrafts and art and all of that. And I want to extend that to everybody who watches my videos. So that way they can hopefully be inspired to do the same. Yeah. So without further ado, let's get into the podcast proper. So today I'm going to be doing both WiPs and FOs, although one's technically not an FO, but we'll get into that. So the first WiP I'm going to talk about is my Lacewing shawl. So I've been puttering away at this. I have a mistake that I have to fix on this. I've been thinking back on this because I misread one of the Italian terms, but it's really starting to take form. I'll try to take a picture of this, and I'll have to make a note of that. All right. So back of the matter at hand. So this is my Lacewings. I'm really loving how the color is transitioning through the work here. I have hit a couple snags with this, other than the mistake that I'm currently working out. I have one more. Well, I've got one more row to rip out because I misread a stitch here. I thought this was basically a knit 13 together, and it's slip 6, knit 7, slip 6 those 6 stitches over all 7 of those stitches, which is a whole thing. the knit 13 together was a whole thing too, but I didn't realize until my next row that I had 7, I was 6 stitches short. So I have to rip all of that out. But it is coming together really, really nicely. The yarn, the thread that I spun, it's a little inconsistent. But for my first lace spin like this fine. I think it's pretty good. And yeah, as I mentioned before, I really love the color transitions. So what you're looking at here is basically 1/2 of one transition. And there are 10 transitions through this ball, which comes to the second snag that I've hit. So the pattern that I'm basing this off of is from the Italian pattern book that I found. Information's on the screen. I'm already halfway through what was written, and this is as far as I've gotten. So I've got some designing to do. I already have like a plan in mind. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to continue working until I get to where the stitches change to like the border that goes around the entire thing. I'm going to do that and then try to reincorporate one of the motifs into each of the petals of this in a mirrored image, and then just straight knitting to do like a really, really thick band on the wings themselves. So that way, ideally, ideally, if you think of butterfly wings having like this kind of 4-petal design, that each of the bottom sides of the petals are going to be a great big long strip of like thick colored work. So that way there isn't any open work on it other than what's around the border. Just so that way I can A, pump it out, because those stitches would knit those sections would knit really quickly, and B, so that way it just uses up the entire ball, because at this point I might get through the second or third color change, and there's 10 throughout this ball if I'm not mistaken. So I want to use as much of this as I can. So this might be giant, it might not. We'll see. Yeah, but I don't really know what else to say about it. It's coming along. I've got probably about an hour of video of me working on this, doing like the writing it out on the graph paper that I have used 4 or 5 pages of at this point. And I say 4 or 5 pages, but I've used that much on each of the pages because the pattern increases like horizontally so quickly, because it's supposed to be a 6-petaled like worked in the round sort of doily placemat sort of thing. So it's increasing very, very quickly to the point that like I have restarted different parts of one petal on one side of my knitting. Yeah, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. Yeah. So this is the ball of Polwarth and silk that I had spun from Good Vibrations in the color Drink the Kool-Aid. Last time I checked on Liz's website, this wasn't available. So she may make it available in preparation for the different Fibre festivals that are going. Liz Miller also goes to the spinning retreat, or has in past years. So I'd imagine that she's going to be dyeing up quite the collection for that. And if she's going to be going to the Fibre Festival this year, which I haven't seen the full list of vendors yet. I don't know if the full list is available to see, but she was planning on going last year. We'll see if if she goes this year. And if she does, she'll probably have some really cool colorways. Yeah. And I'm just working on my 3.75 Knit Picks needles using a Knit Picks cable from my old store. Yeah, that's really all I have to say left. That's really all I have to say on this. It's just coming along. It's coming along. I'm yeah, as I mentioned, the color changes are really nice to get through because they're happening faster than I expected them to, because they seem quite long on the ball. But in the knitting, it's really doesn't take very long to get through the color change at all. This is going to be quite the shawl once I've sat it down, blocked it, and really stretched out all the lace work. Yeah, I'm gonna have to switch to longer needles though, because it's kind of getting to the point that I just need longer needles. So the next project I've got is my Ravishing socks. Ooh, some Angora fluff. Put that over here. Is my Ravishing socks by Nancy Wheeler. So this is done in Belfast Mini Mills specialty sock. This is done in an older twist ball. As I mentioned in a previous episode, I'll put the number of the episode here on the screen, and I'm going to try to work an iCard up in this corner, see how that works. That corner, not this one, that one. Anyway. It's the whole thing. Yeah, so I talked about twist, and there was a criticism, which I agree with, that some of Belfast Mini Mill's older yarn doesn't have enough twist in it. It's quite loose. And that, coupled with the fact that it's spun in the opposite direction and plied in the opposite direction from most commercial yarns, that if you are a knitter, the yarn actually unplies further as you work with it. So, and the reason why that was done, just to go over it, Linda just wanted to make sure that the balls of yarn felt really soft and in the ball. So that's where she came from as a person who can knit but doesn't enjoy knitting. That's how she put. That's why she did it the way that she did. But as someone who does knit and enjoys knitting and recognizes that if you have to unknit a certain row even once, that you aren't working with a plied yarn, you're basically working with 3 strands held together. And that's not ideal when it comes to the yarn. So that is something that you have to keep in mind for older Belfast Mini Mills yarn. But newer yarn that is being spun now, mostly, well, the stuff that's being spun now, because how we are dyeing all of the colors in-house now, as opposed to buying like pre-dyed colors from Amtex, it requires us to put more twist into it for the yarn to stay together. And because it requires me to put more twist into it at the spinning stage, it's not that I'm allowed, and it's not that I'm forced, but it makes a more balanced yarn if I put more twist into it when I ply it back, which then helps with the issue of it untwisting as you work with it. So newer balls of all of our yarn, in fact, since everything has a little bit more twist, but especially our sock yarn has quite a bit more twist, almost twice as much twist as previous batches. It's really, well, not twice as much. 50% more twist. I don't want to exaggerate, but it has a lot more twist in it. But this is, all that aside, this is an older ball, and working with smaller needles than I normally do, especially with yarn of the previous spin of Belfast Mini Mills, my typical needle go-to was a 2.75, and it still is. I still have lots of them. But the patterns that I've been doing have been calling for 2.25, and I've been doing that a lot with my socks lately. And I have to say that I see more of her criticism for like how untwisted, like how much the yarn is untwisting, because I'm finding that if I'm not careful and I don't like redistribute the untwist into the longer strand, if I work 2 rounds, like the yarn has untwisted enough between my fingers that I'm working with 3 strands instead of 1 plied yarn, right? So I understand more with that because you're working smaller stitches, just you're getting more untwisting happening in the area here, like in the space between the top of my finger and the work here. It's untwisting, and since it's not, that untwist is not going into the larger strand overall, it's going to lead to a less than desirable knit. I have found that a few times I've had to go back and like pick up a stitch that I had split because it leaves like a little stitch that looks like almost like a hole. So I've had to rip back and use a crochet hook to fix it. So I totally understand that criticism. The new stuff from Belfast Mini Mills doesn't have this problem because the last pair of socks I did before this was the new twist that I secretly put in before, and I didn't have issues with it. Yeah, so the pattern really well laid out. My only criticism, which she doesn't explicitly say this, it's more of Troy did this to be like uber on top of the pattern because I don't want to change anything about the pattern. There's a lot of stitch markers. So I put a number of stitch markers in all the spaces. So at one point I had, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I had 8 stitch markers in this. Right now I'm working with just 4. And I've ignored a couple of the stitch markers for like the top. Like I had 2 stitch markers denoting the top and the bottom of the socks. So that was my really only criticism. The pattern's really well laid out. As per usual, her patterns are really easy to read. She gives you some pro tips. Yeah, no, I have no qualms with the pattern itself, and it's knitting up really quickly. So this is just the work that I have done while working at work on the days that I don't have somebody in the store. So basically 3 days a week, this is what I'm working on when I have customers in the store, when they're just perusing and I'm just giving them the space that they want to have to peruse. And yeah, and typically what I was doing is able to pump out 10, 15 rows every time we had a customer. So it's been working really, really quickly. I'm going to try to stretch this out so you can see the design. So the design is really, really quite nice. I had it in my head that these were diamonds, that like from here to here, it's like these, each second thing was a different pattern, but it's just the same like little diamond get together in each of these. So it's really easy to memorize. It's really easy to just do these blossom stitches. There's a nice little detail here on the back of the sock. So you can see a ribbon goes all the way down to the heel. Yeah, it's a really, really lovely pattern. I highly recommend trying out this. Excuse me. I highly recommend this pattern because it's really classy. It works really quickly. And I think that it would be useful for any solid or heathery yarn. And I think as long as it's not too crazy of a colorway, I think that a variegated yarn would look really nice in this. So something that is more pastel colors or more like colors. So like tones of green and blue, as opposed to, you know, black and rainbow. Because that will look a little busy. But the long stretches of plain stockinette on the cuff, I think would be good for like a tweed or something like that. Yeah, I can't say enough nice things about this sock. It's knitting up really nicely. It's knitting up like quite thick. So it's going to be a really warm pair of socks once it's done. So I probably won't try them on and try wearing them for like the entire day with my, like I do my other socks, until winter time, because it's getting too hot to wear my wool socks now. But it's a welcome addition to my sock drawer, because I'm now up to, this will be 9 pairs of socks in my sock drawer from that I cycle through often. And I'd like to get that up to 31, so I can wear a different pair of socks every day of the month. And then once a month, wash all my socks, because that's how I do things, I guess. I should mention, I've been working with Belfast Mini Mill Specialty Sock Yarn circa 2020, I think. So anything that's been spun in the last 2 years, which is most things outside of, I think, yellow. Most things have more twist into it now. And I am using my Chiaogu Shorties. This is the first project that I'm working on with the Chiaogu Shorty set that I bought back in February at Fleece and Harmony. Link down in the description. And I really love these needles. So if you are looking for a high-end sock knitting needle set, you don't have to use it just for socks. But if you're just buying this set as a standalone, you're pretty limited in what you can do, because the needles only go up to, I believe, 12 inches circumference. So you're kind of stuck doing socks and sleeves. And the biggest needle in it is 3.25. But if you are an avid sock knitter like me and you want to buy a standalone set, I can't recommend these needles enough. The price tag is a little high, won't lie, but the metal needles they're holding up. I'm not having any issues where my acidic fingers is breaking through the steel as of yet. We'll see how that goes throughout the year. And then the cables, the little red cables that are in this particular set, there's lots of There's lots of give to them. It doesn't hold much of. It has not much memory. There is a little bit of memory to them, so it's not like limp, but there's not a lot of memory in these, and I haven't had any issues with it kinking or anything to that effect. And the joins are really, really smooth. Really good needles, really good pattern, really good yarn. Yeah, so the last thing I'm going to talk about today is the almost finished project. So if you follow my Instagram, you would probably have seen a sneak peek, like a little, sneak peek of the Sylphide Jacket. Turns out not quite done. I have a few changes to make to it because I want this to fit perfectly. But here's the Sylphide Jacket. Oh, I hit my mic. Oops, sorry guys. So here's the Sylphide Jacket. It turned out really lovely. All the ladies at Knit Night gave me lots of compliments on this. So you can see the bluebell patterns there in the back. You can see the creases that I've put into it since I've folded this up and put this away because I haven't worked on this thing yet. And then here are the sleeves in their balloony gloriousness. So they are massive sleeves. I should have saved the picture, but I literally took a picture of me wearing one of these sleeves on my head, and I've got a big head, but these sleeves made my head feel small. So a few things about this pattern. Number one, I would probably, if I were to do this pattern again, I would probably pick a thicker yarn. So the pattern calls for a sport weight, and I did not use a sport weight. I used Belfast Mini Mills Island Collection fingering, which is a fingering weight, which, it's thinner. So it's giving the project a lot of drape and a lot of stretch. But there are some spots here that you can see through the fabric. Like when I'm holding up the fabric to the light, even though here in the sleeve, it's doubled over, I'm seeing light come through. So this is going to be more of a spring, early fall, late spring, early fall sort of dealy. It's not going to keep anyone warm because the work is a little bit loose. So that's the number one thing I would change about it. Number two is to try to stay as close to the pattern as possible. I didn't change the decreases for the raglan. And you may notice here that it looks pretty neat, but the problem with how the pattern is written is that the decreases for the raglan are side by side and they're in opposite directions. And what happens when you do that, I will try to show you here. What happens when you do that, yeah, you can't really see it. Give me a moment. Okay, all right. So I've ripped out some of it, which I have to rip it out anyway. So when you do your decreases side by side like this, and they're going in opposite directions, you can get laddering. So that's what's happening right here. So you can see that there is literally a ladder happening there in your work. That's why on a lot of sock patterns, there's your decrease and then 2 stitches and then another decrease. That helps minimize the laddering that's going to happen, because the laddering is going to be only half as much on the inside of the decrease stitches than your other stitch. And that, coupled with the fact that you're usually using double pointed needles, yeah, that's why when you're working with socks, generally speaking, it doesn't go decrease, decrease. It's decrease, 2 knit stitches, decrease, or at least 1 knit stitch. So, and the reason for that is because this happens when you just put your 2 decreases side by side. I checked the example model of this, and on closer inspection, that's exactly what the pattern shows, is that the pieces look like they are how can I explain it? The pieces look separate. They're not, it doesn't look like it's one full piece. They look like it's been sewn together. And from a distance, it looks like a seam that's been sewn. But in actuality, it's just that the stitches have come apart. They're just leaning away from each other, and it's causing laddering. So what I had done, so flip the sleeve. So on this side here, you'll notice that hasn't happened. So what I did to fix the laddering here is I actually took a crochet hook and I did a surface crochet. So I'm doing just slip stitches all the way up in between the ladders, and I'm just picking up the ladder. So that way on the inside of the work, you can see that there's ladders and then kind of like a little stitching all the way through. Yeah. Took a little while to get that to look nice, but the end result, I think, is quite nice. It makes it look like it's meant to be there, and then when it's stretched apart, like, yes, you can see that there's a center stitch there that that doesn't act quite the same way as the stitches on the other side of them, but overall, it makes the garment look complete. Whereas on this side, you can see that ripping here. So you might have noticed, well, I probably left some of it in, but I'm going to be ripping this out. I'm not going to rip the entire thing out, don't worry. Since I had to basically write a new size for this pattern to fit my roommate Jessie, because the pattern isn't size inclusive, and the included sizes that are there mathematically don't make sense. It's clear that Helene didn't have any plus-sized test knitters test the pattern, which is unfortunate, but I understand test knitters can be expensive. So I don't want to go too ham on criticizing her. So what I did is, instead of following the pattern of the raglan sleeve, other than like the design elements of it, it tells you to continue doing the raglan sleeve until you only have 2 stitches left in the front. So this is the front. So I followed a different, it's not a pattern, but I followed a sizing chart that I found on Sister Mountain. I'll put her link down in the description here. And it's a sizing chart that gives you a wide range of different sizing for women's clothing. And it gives you all different kinds of measurements. So like hip measurements, bust measurements, waist measurements, how tall from the seat of when someone's sitting, from the seat to your armpit, how tall the arm is, how long the sleeve. Fantastic chart. Link down in the description. So I followed that to determine how tall my armhole needed to be. So I worked until I was there, and then I just followed the rest of the pattern. Unfortunately, in this case, it made the neckline a little bit too boat neck for Jessie, and so like it's really sitting off the edge of her shoulder, which the pattern designer, it's designed to sit off the shoulder that way, but because I used a thinner yarn, and that's superwash, there's not as much elasticity and memory to hold it together throughout the day. It would just continue stretching, and Jessie would be doing this all day. So what I'm going to do to alleviate that is I'm going to rip out the neckband. So that's the ribbing that we see here, and I'm just going to continue working the top of the neck up, so that way it ends closer to where my cardigan ends, and close it off. And because of how the weight of the sleeves, it's going to make it more boat neck instead of square neck. But the other thing I want to show, you can see all my ends aren't done yet, but I put all the buttons on it. So these buttons are the buttons that Jessie had settled upon. There was a number of discussions of what buttons that we were going to use. And what I wanted to ensure that, because this fabric is so loosely woven, when we're talking about fabric, it's knit, but the weave of the fabric is quite loose. I didn't want the weight of the buttons to cause them to droop. I did not want that to happen. So what I did is I sewed smaller buttons on the opposite side of these buttons here, so that way the tension of the yarn that I use to sew the buttons sew the buttons on is holding the bigger buttons more in place, so they're more I'm going to say upright, but they, instead of drooping down, they stay flat against the garment. And then what I did to ideally increase the durability of the buttons here is I wrapped the buttons with the yarn. I found that on this cardigan, because these buttons are not wrapped in yarn to prevent wear, the top buttonhole on my cardigan that I'm wearing here has given way. I have attempted to repair it. I did not do it properly, so I will be redoing it here in the future, and I might do a little video on doing that. But to try to protect that, I've wrapped on both sides just to give it a little bit more durability, because there's no nylon in this yarn. This is just 100% fine merino, superwash merino in this yarn. So while it's very soft, the trade-off of soft yarn is that it's not durable, or as durable as coarser yarn. So I'm hoping wrapping the yarn will help limit how much friction and how much give that this has. I'm going to finish this up, and when I give Jessie this the final time, I will be giving her a vacuum sealed bag of the remaining yarn for this, so that way if there's ever a snag that I need to use yarn to fix, or if I need to reattach a button or whatever, we'll have a package that has been vacuum sealed to make sure that there's no chance of ever having any moth get into it, so she can have this garment for the rest of her life. She is one of those people that will take care of this garment the way that it needs to be taken care of, so I'm not worried about it wearing out due to washing. The thing that I'm most worried about is that it's going to wear out because she wears it so often, and I'll have to, do some darning in the elbows and fix a pick or whatever. So this is my finished object. Not quite finished, but it is close to being finished. I just need to sit down and spend a few hours ripping out and reknitting, or continuing to knit the neckline. Yes, the pattern called for 300 grams, so the equivalent of 3 100-gram balls. 300 grams for this. And so far, I have opened up the 8th ball and just opened up the 8th ball, so that's really 400 grams. So I might need to break into the 9th ball to finish the top of the jacket. I doubt it, but I may have to. Yeah, so if you're going to be doing this pattern, the Sylphide Jacket by Helene Arnesen, as most people say, oh, buy an extra ball just in case. Buy an extra 100 grams. And if you're doing one of the larger sizes, buy twice as much yarn, because the amount of yarn that she used didn't account for all of the dimensions that's required. It seems like she didn't increase how much yarn it calls for, as most pattern designers will add another 10% just to make sure that people don't run out. It seems that she didn't do that, which, hopefully she doesn't do that with her next pattern, because I know I've been ripping on her for poorly writing this pattern, but again, we need to be a little bit more, or rather I need to be more clear about the fact that this is written in a different language and then was translated to English, and I read the English version of the pattern. So there's some issues there. It not being size inclusive, not a great idea, but the design features, the shape, the balloon sleeve, all of this, phenomenal. If I were to give a rating on this pattern out of 10, I'd probably still give it an 8 out of 10. Probably would give it a 4 out of 10 out of how clear the pattern is. But that is probably, again, chalked up to the fact that it's been translated from her native language to English, and I read the English pattern. But yeah, the bluebells, the bishop sleeves, it really is a lovely, lovely cardigan. I do recommend that you try it, especially if you are someone who is in one of the straight sizes, so that way you don't have to do a lot of redesigning. You can just work the pattern there as. Yeah, because it really is a cute cardigan. And use the sport weight. Don't use the fingering. Use the sport weight. All right. So that's all that I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you stay on this journey with me on where this channel decides to go here over the next few months. I'm kind of blessed, or not blessed. It kind of worked out in a number of ways that I skipped last week and I did an episode this week. Because it just so turns out that the first weekend of May is the weekend that I'm not going to be here. I'm going to be in Nova Scotia going to the ECMAs with much of the Luminos ensemble, not all of us, but some of us, just to go see if we win an award, because we've been nominated for the award for Best Choral Recording of the Year. Link down in the description. So I think it's just going to work out a little bit better for me this way. So that's I didn't say. So remember, I think last time, the last Finished Object podcast back in March, up in the iCard, I talked about my audition. And you might remember that I played the B-flat clarinet and the bass clarinet, and the B-flat clarinet audition went very well. And then the bass clarinet audition, which was part of the same audition, just at the very end, went horribly wrong. So I successfully somehow was able to audition for the Luminos Chamber Orchestra, and I'm going to be playing in the orchestra. So I know that kind of goes it's counterintuitive for me dropping out of Lynn Symphony to join a different orchestra that is probably going to be playing higher level music. However, as of right now, the formula for rehearsal is we get music, we practice on our own time, and then a few weeks before the final the final performance of whatever we're going to be doing, then we get together. So something like what the PEISO does. So there's less formal rehearsal time that I need to carve out of my schedule, where it's going to be more individual practice time, where I can just kind of like slip that into the slots throughout the day, which I'm going to be doing that later this morning, actually. So I was successfully, I have successfully auditioned, I guess is the term. So I'm going to be playing as the sectional clarinet. So there is the principal clarinetist, who is Dr. Amy Simon, who is currently teaching at the university, the Woodwind Studio, specifically the reeds, the single reeds. Actually, now that I think about it, I think she's just teaching clarinet this year, because Dr. Nicole Strum is doing saxophone. Anyway, so she is going to be playing the principal clarinet. I am going to be playing as the sectional clarinet, and I would imagine that as time goes on, there will be a alternate clarinet, and I'm interested to see which one of my colleagues receive that appointment, because since the orchestra will be playing with the choir, I am a chorister first, and in this ensemble is what I should say. I am a chorister first and then a clarinetist second, even though through my formal training as a musician, I'm a clarinetist first and a singer second. But I was able to get in, and our first concert actually is next weekend, the 30th of April. So for you guys, this is going up on, well, the day that I'm recording it, because it is the 24th of April right now in the morning. So next Sunday, the Island Choral Society, which is a community choir run by Margot Rayskin, is performing Mozart's Requiem. It is a hauntingly beautiful piece. This is Mozart's last piece of music that he ever written. And in fact, he did not finish writing it. And the criticism of the piece is that you can, if you are a musicologist who has studied this era of music, specifically Mozart, you can tell which parts he did not write. And one of the pieces in it, Lacrimosa, which is, everybody knows this piece. If you've ever watched a movie that has a really sad scene that needs to be like elevated and like, oh, this somber mood is very, very high class. Lacrimosa is what is playing in the background. I'll put a link down in the description. This particular movement, Mozart wrote the first 8 bars of. And they are the best 8 bars. It's just so hauntingly beautiful, those first 8 bars. His student and colleague, I can't remember his name. His name's on the screen. He finished writing the song in what he felt was Mozart's style, which as his premier student is probably the closest thing to. But you can tell that the style, while beautiful, does change slightly after. It's less intentional. Mozart has this ability to write simplistic music that is so incredibly difficult to play because it needs to be so intentionally played. It has to be perfect in its execution, because if it's not, it doesn't work. Anyway, so that's on April 30th at Zion Presbyterian Church in Charlottetown on the corner of Grafton and Prince. So if you're in the area and you have nothing to do Sunday afternoon here on Prince Edward Island on April 30th, come down and come see the choir, and you might be able to see me hiding in the back of the orchestra playing the second clarinet part, which is an amalgamation of flute and oboe and I think basset horn. It's a reduced score. So I guess I should give today's episode a rating. Today's episode, I'm going to rate it. I really should think about these ratings before I start. I'm going to rate this. Wow. Clearly, I don't look at my calendar. I'm going to rate this 2 out of 4 months I've gone through on that calendar. Because if you look really close at the bottom of it, that's February 28th. Shows you how often I use that. Look at that calendar. Anyway, so if you still think I'm the worst and you want to continue on this journey of more project-based and less like bi-weekly updates, yeah. If you want to join me on this journey, please like, comment, subscribe, and make sure that you hit the notification bell, since I'm going to be uploading less regularly, but hopefully with higher quality content. But make sure you hit that little notification bell so that YouTube knows that, that YouTube will notify you of my next video, since they're not going to be going up every 2 weeks. And I will try to upload on Mondays, so that way if you just want to check back on Mondays, hopefully that will work. And if that doesn't seem to work for you, just keep an eye on the Instagram page. I will be putting the thumbnail of the videos that I have learned how to do thumbnails on. I will be putting the thumbnail up on the Instagram page for future videos, including today. So link down in the description. You can find our links down there. If you have any questions, any concerns, anything that you'd like to see, any particular project that you'd like to do, like me see me do, comment down below. I'd like to start getting into more like completed videos. So more like as I mentioned, project-based videos, but I want to do like product reviews where I review a product, and part of that product review is that I actually do a project with it. So I've got a number of different yarns that I'm going to be starting those kinds of things with over the next, 8 to 10 months. So like the Maker's Dozen that I'm going to continue doing here with the projects that I'm going to be giving product reviews of everything that I'm using in each of those projects. So I'll be discussing the yarn, the needles, the pattern design, how it's laid out, all of those things. So that way you can get a full idea of what I'm doing, and hopefully give you some more B-roll and a little bit more educational content. Because in my own YouTubing, most of the stuff that I'm watching on YouTube outside of video game watching to have just noise in the background, it's the news or educational videos where there's a project at the end. And I feel like it's a little silly that I've been watching exclusively those videos. I don't actually watch a lot of podcasts where it's just incremental videos of the same projects over and over. Really, the only one that I have kept up on is Fleece and Harmony. And there is probably a 2-year gap between when I stopped watching it and when I restarted watching it. So I don't watch a lot of those videos, but I watch a lot of the project-based ones. So I feel like I know more how to do those than keeping up with these, even though I've been doing these kind of videos for 2 years. At this point, I'm just rambling. So I'll see you guys on the next video, because I don't know when that's going to be.